Hello, everyone. Good to be with you again. Today, I have with me TCA Srinivasa Raghavan. He's not only an economist, but he's also an award-winning journalist. He has worked for several business and economics publications and think tanks. It's been his job to explain what's happening in the economy and what the policies mean. That's what he explains to the newspaper readers and subscribers. So let's hear from him as to what he thinks about the key issues that keep him busy these days. What does he think about? He has moved from Delhi to Chennai, so he has a perspective that is national as well as at the state level. So let's hear from him.
Hi, Subodh. Good of you to have me here. Just a minor correction. I'm still very much in Delhi, but the paper that I write for now is based in Chennai, the Hindu Business Line.
Okay.
As to the Indian economy, I think, I have been following it for the last 43 years. And basically, the core problem that emerges is whether it's businessmen or the government, that is the actors in the economic scene, neither of them have learned how to make a good trade-off between the long term and the short term. Now, you can understand this where the politicians are concerned, their inability to think, say, 10 years ahead. They don't think beyond the next general election, if you're lucky, but usually they're thinking of the next assembly election in India. So a lot of their thinking is very short term. But what I'm unable to understand is why our businessmen, corporates as they're called, have not been able to think long term. Obviously, this is not true of all of them. Some of them have thought long term and have made the investments. But by and large, the Indian businessman tends to think of the next 3-5 years. That's about it. And it's just a coincidence that it, is parallel to the political cycle, but that's about the size of it. Now, what is the evidence for this? First, you can look at the...
But before we get the evidence, what's the harm that this short-run thinking does?
Yeah, what it does is, I was just about to get there. See, one is that it's led to a very sharp decline in investment. And there are other reasons also, like bank credit and stuff coming down after 2012. But overall, the sense that the world is uncertain and I'd better sort of not put in too much money into any large, enormous project, which might be very capital intensive. So there is a tendency to shy away from that sort of thing. But a very important thing that's happened, which feeds into the Indian mentality, not all Indians, obviously, not all Indian businessmen, obviously, but quite a few of them. These free trade agreements now make it very easy for you to import stuff rather than make them. I think the Modi government identified this problem, but is really what the hell can it do? Because while on the one hand, it's trying to negate this problem, on the other hand, it's trying to enter into various FTAs. To what end, it's not very clear. And even without FTAs, there is the China fact where, as the finance minister said 4 days ago in Washington at the IMF spring meetings, our chaps just aren't able to compete with the kind of pretty vicious pricing competition that you get from China, which is virtually, I have some friends who are in business and they've simply thrown their hands up because they're not able to compete with Chinese prices. Now, there are two ways of looking at it. One is to say that, look, why can't you become as efficient as China? But then that requires a whole lot of political changes. And that's where you come back full circle to the short-term, long-term thing. Just a quick example of this is two attempts by this government, three rather, to reform the labor laws. One was that one, and before that there were the land acquisition laws, and then there were the farm laws. All three have been either withdrawn, farm laws bill was withdrawn, and the other two have been put on the back burner. So to the extent that output depends on land and labor and capital, land you are not able to get easily. Labor is highly unionized. And capital is now pretty scarce for a whole variety of reasons. It didn't used to be between 2004 and 2008-9, but now it is. So as far as the economy is concerned, I think that's where we are stuck. We have to break out of this thing. And I don't know how they're going to do it because the incentive structure is all wrong.
So yes, I think what you're saying is that with the political view being short-term, inevitably the business view has also become short-term because they are too scared. And if they're not too scared, then they can't compete. And the government doesn't give them enough comfort that they will be supported. The infrastructure, though, is getting better, but still the labor laws are not amended. The capital is scarce. The land is a problem. So then the investment is held down, and that's what holds down the growth rate. Is that what basically you're trying to tell me?
Yes, yes.
Okay,
Yes,
good.
exactly.
So we agree, we understand that part. Can we shift to some other topic of interest to you now? Economic topic of interest to you?
You know, this is a much deeper structural problem, which is the lists that we have in the Constitution. You know, there's a central list, there's a state list, and there's a concurrent list. And the concurrent list might have had its uses at some point of time. But after 75 years, as state governments have matured, the need for the center to be able to legislate on a whole bunch of issues that can actually be done by the state, that has diminished. So on the economic side, this again, it comes into play with land and labor. Although capital, fortunately, is not so much a state subject in the sense that the banks are all centrally owned and stuff. Private sector banks don't care, about this sort of thing. But land you can't get because there are state laws. And labor, again, if you want to close a factory, for example, it's practically impossible. Now, of course, the problem is gradually diminishing because nobody is starting any factories. So there's no question of closure.
Yeah.
So the numbers are horrendous. There is a spatial thing also, again, which ties in with these lists, is that the bulk of the industrialization, if you can call it that, in India, that's happening is in the peninsular India, Maharashtra, Gujarat, and below. Elsewhere, you don't see much industrial activity, and that's where the labor is. So it's a problem. And I personally, my own view is that a whole bunch of things from the concurrent list should be moved out, either to the states list and to the central list. If you can't do that, if you can't abolish the concurrent list, you must not have more than 10 or 12 items in it.
Can you give
And
an
then, of course,
example of one thing that should be moved right away, either to the states or to the center?
There's education, there's health,
Yeah,
there's land, there's labor. There's no need for everybody. The country should. This is a peculiar thing. You have this BJP government saying the country should have a uniform kind of one country, one citizen, one law. But that doesn't apply in economics. You have different states, 29 different laws. So I think there are a whole bunch of things which could very well easily be moved out of the concurrent list.
all right, okay, good. Let me interrupt you and ask, do you see any bright spots?
Oh, yes. Yes. Despite all this, we are doing pretty well.
Okay.
Really, what I'm saying is we could be doing better if we didn't have these impediments. But in spite of all these things, we are doing pretty well. And I think there's something to be said for the kind of freedoms that we enjoy, regardless of what the world might be saying at the moment. we're doing okay, and the economy is doing pretty okay. I think the other day I saw a chart put out by somebody which shows that India has the least probability of a recession in 2023. This is not a government agency or something. This is somebody sitting somewhere in Europe. So I think we're doing pretty well. We could do so much better. Really.
Okay. All right. So that's your message, that we are not doing too badly, but it doesn't make you happy, because it doesn't make me happy. We would all like to see much better performance, because otherwise we don't get enough jobs. We don't get enough, we are not competitive with China and all those issues, right?
Yeah. There is, of course, the population thing. You've got so many people that your workforce is about 700 billion. How are you going to give jobs as defined by 365 days a year income? How are you going to give jobs to 700 million people? You can't do it. So the casualization of the labor market is very much going to be what's going to happen. But it's the fact that you have, living in India, we see how thick airports. The UPA government made some wonderful, got some private sector chaps to make wonderful investments, and these airports were functioning pretty well. And now all of a sudden, in the last 4 or 5 years, because of income growth, a lot more people have started traveling. So the airports are like what the old bus stands and railway stations used to be. That problem, the airport is able to solve, or the airlines at the ticket counters and all that they're able to solve. The problem that they're not able to solve is the provision of security by the central government or the immigration thing. Now, it's this kind of thing, the bottlenecking because of overcrowding, wherever you go. It's a huge problem. Schools, health, All India Institute of Medical Sciences at any given time has about 1,000 people squatting outside, not outside on the road, inside the compound, but outside the building, waiting to be treated. So population is a huge problem. And you can't price them out like the private sector does. So there's a problem.
Okay. Any final words from you? Any words? Yeah.
I think we should not be too impatient. I think this the idea that the return on investment in a country should be at the same pace as it is in a factory, and the kind of example that China has set, that you start growing at, for 15 years you grow at 10-12% and so on. I think that won't work in India for the simple reason that we have a very nice democracy which takes into account a lot of people's views. So progress will be slow. So we need to expand the time period. The tendency of the Western media in particular to draw comparisons between India and other faster growing countries is that it's like drawing comparisons between an aircraft carrier and a speedboat. It's just the size. It won't allow you to do things like that, plus the structure and all that. So short point, I think in the next 15, 20 years, just look back. Where were we 20 years ago? Where are we now? So world of different.
Yeah, we are certainly far better off than we were 15, 20 years ago. No question about it. Well, thank you for illuminating us so much. It's great to have you here. And maybe we'll be back to you at some point. But for today, I think that's it. And let me also say bye to the viewers and see you in the next video with another speaker. Bye.
Thanks. Bye, Subodh. Bye.